So first of all, I want to welcome to this stage Mikhailo Fedorov, the Minister of Digital Transformation of Ukraine. Please.
Да, всім доброго дня.
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, thank you for the invitation. Secondly, I'd like to tell you about what's happening in Ukraine in terms of digitalization so that we could understand the challenges we face daily.
Sets on for the simultaneous translation for our English-speaking guests.
I think that people kind of understood it, that they have to put on the headphones. But anyway, over the last 2 years, 2 years ago, the Ministry of Digital Transformation was created, and 2 years ago, it was presented a project like DIA. It's one-stop shop, one window where you can receive all the state services in our country. It's a mobile app and mobile portal. Over 2 years from the very beginning of the development of the project, more than 10 million unique users of this mobile app and more than 10 millions of unique users of mobile app were used.
Відцифровано і багато людей.
And a lot of people are working on the fact that these services have to be launched in our country. Great audience of users and quick pace of digitalization, re-engineering of the processes, and relaunching of a lot of services. Of course, it gives an impact to an important
Коли мільйони українців користуються
format. When millions of Ukrainians use state services, there is an actualized issue of cybersecurity. What is it that we do for that? And to develop the protected products and what challenges do we see, and the ministry and the central authorities, law enforcement authorities, international society has to solve so that the citizens wouldn't face problems for which we're building the most comfortable society in the world. First of all, this is the policy formation. Currently, the realization of the policy and the formation of the policy in cybersecurity makes the consumer service, which has been going through transformation and reforms, and right now, in our opinion, it generates an effective policy. The realization of this policy will enable the solution of critical issues and the prevention of a lot of problems which we will face in the future. Secondly, it provides an operational opportunity to realize the policy. I mean, effective teams, effective management, the teams on the base of the ministries and which are the administrators of a lot of registries in our state. And in my opinion, apart from the resources and financing and quick adoption of regulations and laws, we also speak about the effective activity of law enforcement bodies so that we could respond and investigate the cases which take place today and which, first of all, refer to the population of Ukraine. What is it that we do so that the product DIA could be the most secure product in our state? First of all, this issue is about architecture. We've built an architecture thanks to which DIA does not save personal data but simply reflects the information from different registers administered by different state bodies, different state companies, state ministries. And this way, when the person goes through authorization, in this point, thanks to modificator, which puts the information from different registries, and the services are done by the help of the transactions in different state registries. So then the issue of protection of state registries and the development of the system of sensors and information gathering, monitoring, response cyber center, which has been relaunched and right now it is functioning. I think that we will hear more about it from the representatives of the consumer service. UA 30 has has been recently launched. This is the service which monitors basic state registries and reacts to the accidents. The next step, of course, is the construction of an effective team which will rate team which in real time will be able to find vulnerabilities in the products before we launch them, which are in the pilot environments. And strengthening this direction at the same time, we will always have the bug-bound competition where hackers from all over the world work on finding on the test environment some vulnerabilities of our product, and on the go, we could fix these vulnerabilities. It's a very important step from the point of view of trust to the product, and also the development of the digital brand of Ukraine, because we have the opportunity to engage the specialists worldwide to daily improve our product. And this way, the effectively constructed architecture, effective team, and the fulfillment of certain policy which is formed today and constant engagement of the best specialists makes it possible to balance and move and develop the product actively despite the hazards and threats we have in our country, cyber threats and hazards in the world. For this system to develop effectively, we allocate a lot of time to IT education. To do that, we have a complex vision of what is necessary to do so that we could have more specialists in Ukraine in the sphere of cyber protection, and we realize this policy. And one more important project which will stimulate the development of the companies which work in the area of cyber security is the project DSCT. Is one of the best tax systems for technological companies in the world. So we've taken the model which shows the result, tax office, and it shows the 5 times lower taxation, and it provides the ability to adapt it for the technological companies worldwide. And we hope that next year, when this project starts to work, in a year, in 2 years, there will be a geometrical development progression for the companies which work in the area of cybersecurity. So from the point of view of our ministry, despite the policies we form, we try to do everything possible to create an ecosystem which will enable the development of business so that more specialists could be here who will work in the state and help protect basic information infrastructure, and the business will develop which will help protect from protect the business from cyber attacks, because for now, unfortunately, in Ukraine we don't have the culture of the development of special departments of businesses which are responsible for cyber security. There is no culture for many companies to outsource the companies providing cybersecurity. And also, this is an important challenge which we have to solve. And the conference today is one more opportunity to talk about it, to actualize this topic, and to understand what stimuli have to be created so that the business which produces the products and services could pay attention to own infrastructure and do everything possible for the personal data of Ukraine to be protected. And right now, more the representatives of the consumer service of Ukraine will say about the services which we should provide to companies so that Ukrainians' credentials could be protected. The similar pace of development and the construction of the ecosystem, the adoption of regulations and laws, and everything I have just said enables to launch the products which are the first in the world. For example, we've become the first country in the world which has legalized and adopted the law project, which made the e-documents the same as paper documents. It's the first country which has joined the electronic market of the EU with COVID Ukrainian certificates. It was possible from the very beginning to fly to the European Union, and up until now, we've done that extremely quickly, and we've done all the necessary measures to be joined to the electronic digital market, and we passed all the stages of the audit. And this is the issue of trust to the infrastructure and safety of the infrastructure. Next year, we plan to launch a few hundreds more services which will help Ukrainians get high quality service. And the last, but not least, there are a few approaches to the development of the sphere of personal data, because when we speak about the state service, what is it that we do? And cybersecurity, first of all, we speak about the protection of personal data of Ukrainians, and there are a lot of different approaches. When the state believes that the personal data is the property of the state and uses it wherever it wants, and there is a different approach when personal data the state believes that the personal data is the data of the citizens, and the state does everything possible to protect this data, and so that every citizen could understand where this data is stored, by what rules, and what is happening to that data. So we are the adepts of the second approach. That's why we've created the Citizens Office, where every person can see what property he or she has, what land, what car, the documents, and so on. And in a few days, we will launch the service, and it is already realized, where a loan is taken, or a loan in the bank is taken, and the person gets the notification that the financial institution provided the loan to this person. And when we speak about the documents, we can say that it's impossible to fake these documents because they are verified by QR code in real time. It's impossible to receive the service without the person because there are some stages of verification. But when we speak about paper documents, we face a lot of situations where the scammers or fraudulent they receive documents. And right now the approach to personal data, people have to understand what's happening with the personal data and what is happening in the digital state, and would receive the notifications. This tool helps to overcome the first problem, where we don't understand what's happening to the data which is in the paper or on the paper. So we want to receive a perfect picture where the person gets notified if some official or official institution does something with personal data, verifies, transfers this data, so that the person could understand where his or her data is used and could receive the notification to respond. And this is the main approach that we apply. And also I'd like to speak. We were invited.
Генерального прокурора, і ми багато
General Prosecutor's Office team invited us to this event, and we communicate about the development of cybersecurity in legal enforcement bodies. I think that the challenge here is for all the states that are actively on the way of digitalization. This is a better methodology of investigation of different frauds and cases that are related with digital tools, cyber threats. And today we see, cooperating with cyber police, security service of Ukraine, the methodology, the decision-making process is done while cooperating the governmental authority and with the deep understanding of engineering processes, how the services are done, are built, because on monthly we have new services in place, and it is all the time an opportunity for people that perform that deal with different frauds can generate due to social engineering to get credentials of citizen illegally. So such fruitful cooperation to form new methodology and to support of a legal drafting body, adoption of certain laws. We'll be talking about the laws, and I knew that we will talk about this. Financing will monitor the pulse and proactively response to problems. Imagine, in order to make a short resume, today Ukraine is under active digitalization. This tempest was not ever before. Millions of Ukrainians monthly get the services of new level in Ukraine, and this is a new level of challenges. And we do understand these challenges, and we're trying to build an ecosystem which will permit not only to respond to problems, but to forecast them and to create stimuli that the country should have more countries working in cybersecurity sector, because with the cooperation of the state and businesses and with the traditional quality experts, we can build a protected, independent infrastructure. So thank you for the invitation. I wish you fruitful communication, exchange of experiences, and the decision that we will implement in life further on.
All have big hopes and big support for your ministry. Next, we would like to welcome on stage Viktor Zhora, Deputy Chairman of the State Service of Special Communications and Information Protection of Ukraine. Please.
Доброго дня, шановні колеги. Те, що цей форум вдається проводити на настільки високому рівні, це безумовно результат взаємодії, спільної праці, в тому числі різних відомств. І я б хотів в своїй доповіді окрему увагу приділити питанням взаємодії. Думаю, що про це сьогодні було багато вже і сказано, і буде сказано. І хотів би подякувати вам за те, що знайшли час і зібралися в такій великій кількості для обговорення дуже важливих питань. And of course, thank you so much to our international guests who find time in this challenging time to join this event. Дякую Михайлу Альбертовичу. Він неодноразово сказав.
Thank you very much for Mr. Fedorov, Minister. It means that the state and the cabinet of ministers and the president and the legislative power pays attention to cyber issues. And I see two important aspects to questions of response to cyber crimes. From one hand, this is preventive measures. From the other hand, this is responsibility, which is, in its terms, serves as prevention. A State Committee for Special Communication is not a legal enforcement body, but our service is the body which forms and implements state policy in the area of cyber protection, which are also preventive actions to provide protection of state information resources, critical infrastructure, the data from state registers, personal data of citizens, etc. in cyberspace. Cyber security, these are three classical backgrounds. These are technology, people, and processes. People who are using the technology, who are implemented this technology into processes, then arrange configuration, safety, security policies, perform attack or defense actions in the cyberspace. In general system of cybersecurity, which is comprised with all these three steps, will not be possible without interaction. Since the security, it always security, exchange information about cyber threats, incidents, joint work during the investigation, joint operations, joint training. So the interaction, we can say, is important, but the main driver in building global system of cybersecurity. If we talk about interaction, I would like to say Also separate by start from the main fundamental on which we can build a protected society. This is cyber hygiene. Cyber hygiene, it's when each citizen or a worker, before opening to open any mail from a known sender, actually puts its own important contribution to the development of the country. Every citizen should understand that he is the last chain of decision taking, and his action will impact on further implication, which will lead to cyber threat implementation. So we work together with the Minister of Digitalization to increase awareness of civil service for cybersecurity system. Another important issue, it is joint rules of play. Recently we proposed and the National Coordinated Center on Cyber Security supported our initiatives as to single taxonomy of cyber incidents. We have a single classification, which is a common language, which can be used by every subject of a national system of cybersecurity. Also, we proposed TLP protocol, indicator of opportunities for to monitor cyber incidents. This is a joint common language that we can speak and work more actively, like before. The second important aspect is the subdivision of cybersecurity. Those are the people that daily at the facilities of critical infrastructure in the bodies of executive power are responsible for cybersecurity. Now we are living through the important process of transformation from paradigm of protection information into paradigm of cyber protection or provision of cyber safety. We understand this is a new area of knowledge, and here we have to concentrate on training of necessary staff, the youth who comes to work. We know that in 2 million deficit of working places of cybersecurity IT specialists around the world. Ukraine is not the exclusion. And so annually we graduate 1,500 IT specialists by the specialty C125. Another point is to increase qualifications of responsible people. Vice Prime Minister mentioned about cyber center 3.0. These are our newly renovated capacities, our new vision how to build national system of cyber protection. Cyber center, which was opened at the grounds of State Committee for Special Communication. This is functioning already. I'll dwell on it later. Also, we have training center, so we are ready, and we do already the training amongst the main subjects of cybersecurity of national system amongst the workers of critical infrastructure facilities. We plan training including those responsible in the executive power, in the sector of defense and security, amongst people who daily do their contribution to make our country more resilient in cyber sense. Fourth point, this is new standards. So we are going in new paradigm of comprehensive protection system of information and information management systems that should be created to protect ICT system in the bodies of in central bodies of state power. We will propose new standard that is based on best practices, world practices. This standard is a framework elaborated by the United States. Also, the fifth point, this is interaction that I started to talk about in the beginning between the subjects should be outlined in some rules of play within a regional model of cyber protection. Regardless of the fact that the Parliament still work on the elaboration of new law on cybersecurity, which would be adequate to a new strategy of cybersecurity. We propose our vision of our sector. This means relationship between subjects, roles and responsibilities, and these zones are dealing with the academic sector, private sector, public, businesses, state in general, which has three horizons, and inside that we have a defined rules of play technically, by the way, all built-in, sectoral, facility, regional centers of excellence in cybersecurity, exchange information centers, and cybersecurity management centers. These expert centers of excellence permit us, in terms of large-scale cyber attack, to reduce the time to response, to exchange practices of protection, to implement policies of protection, and be strong immediately. The building general system of cybersecurity is based on the principles of interaction between agencies, and this interaction is strengthening interaction between subjects of protection and facilities, interaction between technical teams, and this is always not feasible without technology, without increase of our capacity, without those hardware for protection that should be installed at critical infrastructure facilities. And our contribution as State Committee for Special Communications is a proposal of methodology, recommendation to increase cyber protection of objects of critical infrastructure that was proposed recently. It's a recommendative document, but I think that it will be mandatory for execution, since this doc is based on cybersecurity framework elaborated by the National Institute for Technologies and Standards in the United States. That is modern document, except in our national neighbor gives a possibility to private companies that are a bulk percentage of critical infrastructure in the country to strengthen their own cybersecurity. When we form the register of such facilities, it will happen next year. In the beginning, we will have a strict list, and we will control the level of protection of such facilities. It will be our contribution to general system of cybersecurity, and when the law shall be adopted, defined by the player that will regulate this area very soon. Coming back to UA 3.0, to this new strategy, which is a part of national strategy of cybersecurity, I actually encourage you, and at the end, to recollect our example in participation in investigation. This is the case I can talk a lot publicly. It is related with the substitution of coordinates of vessels during the military drill, but this case is not yet investigated at the end. We demonstrated the cooperation, interaction between the State Committee for Special Communication and General Prosecutor's Office. We are the office that can provide technical expertise during investigation. Why it didn't happen as a success? Because we needed the interaction with other subjects beyond the jurisdiction of Ukraine, and except our contributions and gains that I mentioned, we would like to mention the problems. The absence of one focal point and a CR2A team in Cyber Center, located in Cyber Center US 3.0, is such a focal point. But from the point of technical interaction with the similar teams that are the member of first world community. This is actually a response team for computer incident. It's not a side of interaction between legal enforcement bodies. I sincerely hope that within the conference we will work out methodology to interact during such investigations, and we will propose new solutions to form such a focal point which will permit not only to increase the level of global cybersecurity and to search for solutions cybersecurity protection, but also it will be a possibility to Ukraine to take more active participation in building up a world-efficient system of response to cybersecurity, which is important from the overview that the risks are increasing, the number of crimes are increasing. This problem requires new, non-standard alternative ways of resolution. So I think that we will be successful there. Thank you.
Можливо, ще
Thank you so much for your speech about your difficult work.
for Mr. Жора. No questions, everything's clear. Так, все зрозуміло. Дякую вам.
Everything is clear. Thank you.
Internal Affairs, Mr. Ігор Бондаренко.
Доброго дня, шановні учасники.
Good afternoon, dear participants of the forum. Thank you so much for the invitation. I will try to logically continue the topic which the Deputy Premier and my colleague from the State Consumer Service has started. My presentation is named the effective model of the national system of cybersecurity, the challenges of construction and the ways of overcoming the problems. It has the word a problem. In my opinion, we have to talk about the problems. We have to understand what the problems are, because when we define what is it that is a problem, it's probably the first step to overcome that problem. Currently, we have an adopted new strategy of cybersecurity, which has 3 strategic goals for the next 5 years: the capacity building, sustainability, and improvement of the cooperation. That's what my colleagues have already said, the improvement of the cooperation between the stakeholders of the security, and we are working on that. But even with the adoption of the new strategy, we still have a lot of unsolved issues which appeared and were mentioned in the strategy of 2016. So, what is it that we're talking about? Not clarity and of the responsibility of cybersecurity workers, absence of complex development program of the national system of cybersecurity. That's what the previous speaker said about. The absence of regulatory framework definitions. And in particular, there is a detail that we don't have the criteria by which we have to move from cybersecurity to cyber defense. The basic level of maturity of the system of cybersecurity and the system of monitoring of the condition of cybersecurity, and the lack of awareness and readiness to adequately respond to the hazards and risks for most stakeholders. The main challenges which we face are not perfect legislation, the organizational regulatory component that triggers everything else, poor technical capacities. Here we have the objective triggers like lack of funding or financing, or until recently, until the active informatization started, unfortunately, we have to admit that financing of our industry was by the residual principle. Right now, this paradigm has changed, and I hope that this positive dynamics will be strengthened in the future. We also have such components, and it has been mentioned the lack of qualified personnel and also the certain organizational capacities of the subjects, and I hope this dynamics is positive and sooner quite soon will receive the quality we hope for. In terms of overcoming ways by directions of the problems we speak about, so in terms of lack of the clarity of the tasks of the main stakeholders of cybersecurity. This situation leads to copying and overlapping of responsibilities and functions, regulatory, managerial, law enforcement, I mean the state service and the state security, state consumer service and state security service, the state consumer service and Ministry of Digitalization and other organizations whose responsibilities overlap. It creates ineffective use of the resource and it does not give us the result we hope for. Then again, the lack of we haven't fully formed the legislation and we don't have the main documents which help identify critical infrastructure, which Mr. Victor spoke about before me. So right now we have to jointly work on drawing the line between the managerial and law enforcement functions between the stakeholders and to implement the identification of critical infrastructure to protect it and to provide its sustainability so that we could focus on these two directions. And the technical direction, Mr. Victor and the Vice Premier spoke about it, that there is an absent classification of accidents and lack of regulations and policies, but we work on that actively. The absence of common operational framework to exchange the information. And all these components, if we look at them from the point of view of the general topic of our forum, they all relate to the object and objective part of the crime. So this is something that the law enforcement system has to react to identify the crime, investigate the crime, and without clear definition of the object and clear understanding of the crime, content, and its objective part, it would probably be difficult for us. When I say us, I mean the law enforcement institution. It would be difficult for us to demonstrate efficacy, adequate efficacy, and to provide the expected result. Actually, these are codependent components which have the direct relation to the efficacy of law enforcement component in the area of cyber crime management. Here you can also see more slides. And I'd like to stop briefly on the organizational issues. Then again, strategic cooperation on cybersecurity among state institutions and operators. This is on the initial stage, unfortunately, but it also has a positive dynamics and it balances up. So I hope that in the near future we will receive new quality in this sector. Also, inter-sectorial cooperation and communication. Mr. Victor has said about it, even in contrast to the previous period, it is already in much more adequate and in much better condition. It gives good results, but it's not enough. In terms of categories, so what all of us should work on together. Probably it would be appropriate to implement, instead of the control function, some functional service approach, and it's for the owners of the objects of informational critical infrastructure, and in general for the subjects it would be more acceptable model where they can use the unified solution, which by default complies with all the standards, and they won't have any need and that they won't be distracted by unnecessary resources and efforts to provide and comply with the requirements. As all of us understand, given the reasons we've mentioned, not all organizations, not all institutions are capable of doing that in a high quality standard way. In terms of the development of educational programs, we've spoken about it because the human resource we need, it has to be aimed and it has to be prepared probably more effectively. And right now we can go to the functions of the subjects, to the functions of the institutions or subjects of cybersecurity, in understanding of the law of Ukraine about the provision of cybersecurity of Ukraine. We have 6 subjects, and out of them, the National Police of Ukraine, the subdivision of the National Police, Cyber Police, the State Security of Ukraine, law enforcement body, the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, General Headquarters of the military forces is also the subject, but they act in case of emergency, while the National Police and the Security Service of Ukraine act, well, there is drawn a line between their functions, but this line is not clear and it can be understood out of current practice. It happens this way that all people aim their activity in the same direction. So probably it's not correct story, and the state shouldn't spend its resource to excessive overlapping of the functions. There also we have investigation bodies of Ukraine, but they run investigations in terms of the risks and hazards and threats to national cybersecurity. The state service of state consumer service is the coordinator of other subjects of cybersecurity, and this role, it also has to be more fundamentally strengthened, and we would really support that. It would be easier for all of us, and the result would be more effective when everything would be done in with clear differentiation of responsibility areas. All right, I want to talk also about the regulatory framework and about legal element of that, about law enforcement bodies who are the subjects of cybersecurity, as I have already mentioned that in the previous slide. So all of us use such terms as cybercrime, cyberterrorism, cyberspace, cyber espionage, and unfortunately these terms are not in the criminal code or criminal procedural code of Ukraine. So going back to clear definitions of the objects and of the crime content, probably it's not that good that we don't have everything necessary in our regulations. Cyber attack and cyber accident is not mentioned as the criminal offense in the way that these definitions have to be in the legislation. Part of the criminal code criminal offense against humanity and global order has only 13 articles, and there is no article about information communication systems. There is no block of activity we're talking about the objects of critical infrastructure. It's not mentioned there. And more or less, it's said about in a free form to cyber crimes are in 306 article of the Crime Code of Ukraine. It's the on purpose destruction of communication network. So here we speak about the disruption of cable networks of the mobile networks. Let's think together whether it's a cyber crime or not. That's kind of a strange story. Probably it influences something, but definitely it does not have the aim of cyber when you just destroy the mobile network cables. So to implement effective measures from law enforcement bodies to counter cyber crimes and cyber hazards, we have to implement the conventions about the cybersecurity, about gathering of electronic data. And this is our critical joint problem because we haven't solved it yet. In the criminal code, we use the term criminal offense in the area of the use of electronic computing devices, computers and computer networks, and the networks of e-communication, while in the law of cybersecurity and in the convention there are two terms, cybercrime and cybercriminality. So in my opinion, there are some inconsistencies, critical inconsistencies, which complicate adequate response. On top of that, we don't just speak about these problems. If we speak about them, it means that we realize them, and at the same time, we're trying to do something, but it doesn't always depend only on us. For example, right now, in Verkhovna Rada, in the government, we have two law drafts on hearing to remove these inconsistencies I've mentioned. One law draft was introduced in the autumn last year, and it is named about the increase of efficacy of countering cyber attacks. That's the name of that law draft. And the other law project is the following. It was also introduced last year, the increase of efficacy of the countering cybercrime and the increase of the use of cyber evidence or artifacts. So here we need some consolidation and organized work with the deputies, specialized committees, so that we could actualize these law drafts and for them to be adopted. And in my opinion, that would really simplify the organization of work of law enforcement block. And it would remove the problems we've mentioned. All right, so what else do we have here? What else can I say not to overload you with the information? So let's move on to the last slide. Here you can see our common tasks for the near future. I'd like to ask everyone who is here with us today, who believes that he or she is the subject of this process, so we are ready to cooperate in this regard. Here you can see the positions I have mentioned and the previous speakers have already mentioned. So basically is the development and approval of the new law on cybersecurity. Mr. Victor said about it. Changes to the criminal procedural law of Ukraine, something that I've named before. And also there is a list of tasks. Probably, not even probably, for sure, these tasks would simplify the execution of our functions and tasks, the differentiation of regulatory, administrative, and supervisional functions, the differentiation of military and civil responsibilities. And as I understand in the concept of reform, and these points are already there, Mr. Victor perhaps can confirm that and provide more information related to that. Also, in terms of the implementation of educational programs, we've said about it. In terms of the implementation of the functional service approach to cybersecurity. So probably these are the most timely, relevant, and priority points which we have to focus on. And that's what I call for to do. And on my part, I'd like to say that we are ready to actively participate in this direction and to support joint initiatives and engage in the activities which are happening like today, to public activities and work activities. We are ready to cooperate and provide any practical assistance in everything that we have experience and competence in. Thank you one more time for your attention, for this opportunity to speak, and if you have any questions, I am ready to answer.
Maybe we have questions. Yeah, I see one hand, please, microphone.
Добрий день, дякую. Віталій Власюк, радник.
Vitaly Vlasuk, the advisor of Prime Minister, one global issue, so how can we help you? But I think that we can discuss it separately with you. So I have a question as a practical miner. What's your attitude to mining? Cybersecurity or not cybersecurity? What is it? Where is the borderline? Thank you so much for your question. In terms of how to help us, well, we have the set of critical cases. We will share this set with you and we will explain what's the actuality, and we will ask you for your support. In terms of mining, well, right now, the Ministry of Interior Affairs is not the law enforcement body. We formulate the policy, and one of the main functions that the Ministry of Interior Affairs has is the creation of safe environment. So in the understanding of cyber, this is also the environment of the person. So we also use this approach, and cyber police directly fulfills the law enforcement function and provides the fulfillment of rules and compliance with the rules and prevents crimes. In terms of mining, I haven't studied that profoundly or deeply. We have a bit different direction of work and different tasks in the area of informatization. So in terms of mining, with the information I have received, from the information I've got, I understand that there is a criminal element there. And the main story is that which attracts attention of the law enforcement bodies. As I understand, that's what you mean, right? Well, actually, there are even two elements. The illegal use of energy, when for mining they use, let's say, illegally energy resources and get some benefit from that. There are some cases, and these cases were even public and popularized in mass media when big companies created in Vinnytsia, in state energy office. Yes, that is one block, and the other block is when actually the received cryptocurrency is used with criminal aims. As I know,
У них так само
So we have also discussion panels, and they may answer to this question in more elaborated ways. So now we have the experience working with this issue. This is not critical. What I'm saying that maybe if it will be in adequate regulated order for the state, this activity could be, my personal opinion, I don't see having resolved these two components, no evil or problem here. Thank you.
Maybe some more questions?
Maybe some more questions.
Доброго дня, дякую.
Thank you for your presentation. It was really interesting, and my question would be a strategic and practical one. Today, Prosecutor General mentioned about our operations done by Ukrainian bodies, and foreign colleagues may confirm
Дуже-дуже
that our cooperation is done with, and these operations are cool. So do you consider the specialization of investigators probably on national level and in regions, in localities that would be oriented to cybercrime? I will answer with pleasure to this question because I'm investigator in two phases, so to say. I was investigator in old criminal procedure code and within the new one. So I think that such a specialization informally does exist in investigative units. That we have specialists on general criminal, economic crime. It's not a new tendency, but we don't have a formal distribution of these responsibilities. So I don't think that this distribution will resolve the issue. The question of training of such experts. We have a faculty in Kharkiv University which prepares operative and investigative teams. But probably we will think about such specialization to give them more cyber blocked knowledge. To what extent it will result in distribution or in the designation of certain investigative groups on cyber security issues, I don't think that it will be a good effect. So now they are still in practice, they do understand their qualifications, and they are involved in those crimes where they are effective. It would be useful for us if you could formalize it, because we have a relevant unit in the Office of Prosecutor Generals, and we cooperate with the other prosecutors, and it is active. So it's a wish to consider such an option. Okay, we will work on it. Thank you. So maybe you have more questions? Thank you very much for such presentation.
Next, please welcome Natalia Tkachuk, Head of the Service for Information Security and Cyber Security of the Office of the National Security and Defense Council of Ukraine. So please welcome.
Good afternoon, dear participants of today's conference. We're discussing very important issues of cybersecurity, combating cybercrime, which is totally impossible without effective international cooperation. That's why I would like to greet our international partners who found possibility to visit this conference, and I wish all of us a fruitful cooperation today. So first of all, let me explain what we do in the framework of the National Cybersecurity System of Ukraine. Mr. Bondarenko had already presented you the National Cybersecurity System of Ukraine, but he forgot, to my regret, one of key elements, the National Coordination Center for Cybersecurity. So according to the law of Ukraine of cybersecurity, there are 6 main entities responsible for cybersecurity in Ukraine. State Service for Special Communications and Information Protection, which provides policy and control in the sphere of cyber protection. National Police of Ukraine, who fights against cybercrime. The Security Service of Ukraine. It is a counterintelligence body which combats against cyber terrorism and cyber espionage and other important cyber attacks on our critical infrastructure. Then it's Ministry of Defense, which is responsible for cyber defense. National Bank of Ukraine, responsible for cyber protection of banking sector, and the intelligence agencies, which provides cyber intelligence. And there is a National Coordination Center for Cybersecurity. It is the working body of the National Security and Defense Council of Ukraine, which provides coordination and control over the activities of all these entities. Also, the NCCC is the coordinator body for the cybersecurity strategy of Ukraine. And as you probably know, recently the president of Ukraine had adopted new cybersecurity strategy of Ukraine. It is a very comprehensive document. It is based on the best international practices and experience, and also it is very ambitious because it has 93 tasks, precise tasks for Ukraine, in order to provide effective cybersecurity. And now we are working on the implementation plan for this document. So according to the strategy, cybercrime is clarified to be one of the most serious threats to national security and to cybersecurity of the state. That's why, of course, one of the strategic goals of the strategy is capacity building in the fight against cybercrime. So what does it mean? What do we imply? So Ukraine will ensure that law enforcement bodies and special purpose body with law enforcement functions will acquire capabilities to minimize the threat of cybercrime, strengthen their technological and human resources for preventive measures and investigation of cybercrime. And there are precise tasks what are needed to be done in order to reach this aim. So there are quite a lot of such tasks. Of course, as previous speakers had said, that it's concerning legislation, implementation of the Budapest Convention, dealing with the electronic evidences, mining of cryptocurrency. Of course, it's appraising the professionalisms and knowledge of investigators, judges, experts, conducting national cybersecurity awareness campaigns, and so on. So why we're talking about cybercrime? Because today, cybercrime, it is a threat not only to a national, but to international security. According to the experts, estimated financial losses from cybercrime in 2020, it was $1 trillion. And it is expected that in 3 years' time, it's going to be trillions of dollars annually. Also, the digitalization, of course, is a privilege of modern society, which brings benefits to each of us and to any country. But also it makes us vulnerable in the face of cyber criminals. Because today, cybercrime also is a threat to our main human rights. And of course, I'm talking about right for privacy. Now, cybercrime also is a tool for cyber espionage and cyber terrorism, and it is a tool in a hybrid war. But not only money, not only national interests, and not only personal data can be jeopardized by cybercrime. Also, it is human lives. Because in 2020, it was the first case when a lady died as a result of cybercrime. It was in a German hospital. This lady was ill, and the medical personnel was not able to provide her with necessary medical help, because the information systems of this hospital was blocked as a result of a ransomware cyber attack. So now cybercrime is actually like a nuclear weapon. So what about Ukraine? Of course, like in any world, we see that cybercrime became more acute, more comprehensive, more difficult to detect. But also we have our own peculiarities. In Ukraine, the biggest part of most serious cybercrimes, it is the element of hybrid aggression from Russian Federation against our country. These cyber attacks are aimed at critical facilities, at state authority systems, and the most important systems of Ukraine. The aim of such cyber attacks is to gather sensitive information, to disrupt the activities of critical infrastructure, to discredit Ukraine. And also we have one peculiarity of cybersecurity landscape for Ukraine, is that we notice that cybercrime is used as a further tool of disinformation campaigns. So what is the mechanism? The official websites of state authorities are being hacked, and false information on behalf of Ukraine is being published. And simultaneously, this information is spread all over the world with all the Russian propaganda machine, including journalists, news channels, trolls factories, and so on. For example, the official website of local government of Ukraine had been hacked, and false information that regional nuclear power station was broken was posted on this site, and that it was a radiational pollution. Of course, it was fake information, but you can imagine what harm it did to just stability, social stability in that region. And, well, of course, all the world are talking about Russian hackers, and we know that this is Russian hackers who are behind of all these cyber attacks. But for now, for so long, it was only the United States of America who managed to do the proper attribution. And today, I would like to boast with our great results because we managed to do the same. 2 weeks ago, the Special Service of Ukraine released the results of their special operation, which was aimed at revealing of the activity of the Russian hacker group Armageddon. This hacker group was created in 2014, and it has done more than its cyber attacks were directed at more than 5,000 objects in Ukraine. So we managed to gather all the information and all the proofs that now we can say that the Armageddon, actually it is a unit of the FSB, its Crimean subdivision. We gathered all the technical data, all the mechanisms of cyber attacks. We even have phone calls between executors while they were conducting these cyber attacks. As a result, 8 people were convinced of crime according to Ukrainian law, and 5 of them were convinced of treason, because these 5 people are still citizens of Ukraine. They were former officers of the security service of Ukraine who betrayed their country and started working with the enemy. But anyway, this result, this great attribution, shows that Ukraine's cyber capabilities is rather very developed during these years, but we need the support of our international partners in order to do further common attribution, to use the mechanisms of international sanctions, because the Russian Federation should know that all the world is united against this threat to democracy, I would say even that. When we are talking about international cooperation, as previous speakers had said, there are many directions where we need to improve and to facilitate our cooperation in the sphere of legislation, information sharing, and so on. But at the end, I would like to draw your attention to a very important problem in the sphere of Ukrainian cooperation with other country partners, with other partners. I'm talking about prosecution of Ukrainian hackers. Yes, really, in Ukraine, we still have very talented young hackers who are on the dark side. According to Ukrainian law, we cannot extradite our citizens. Of course, we can prosecute them in the framework of MLA and joint investigations according to Ukrainian law. And actually, we do this. But you should understand that the criminal sanctions for the cybercrime, according to Ukrainian Penal Code, is 10 times, even if not more, less than the same penalties in the legislation of European countries, United States of America, and other our partner countries. So what we have in a result is a result of a joint, very comprehensive and very difficult cyber operation. We get the Ukrainian hacker prosecuted in Ukraine, but there is a court decision, and for example, he is only put on probation, or even just get a fine. For example, for the same crime in the USA, he would get a 10 years imprisonment. This is really very serious problem, and this is Ukrainian problem. And I see only one way to improve this problem, to change our legislation and to make our penalties for cybercrime equal to other civil world. Otherwise, Ukraine will turn into a mecca for cyber criminals. Thank you very much for your attention. If you have any questions, please.
Thank you. So please, maybe we can have some questions from the audience. Yes, lady, please.
First of all, I want to thank you for a very interesting presentation that was very informative for all of us. I am a Portuguese judge, and I'm currently at Eurojust, so completely different background. But I thought it is particularly acute, the last point that you made, that the penalties are very low. And we have several cases in which European authorities cooperated with Ukrainian authorities with good operational results. And my question to you is the following. So if you cannot persecute them, these perpetrators, on pure cybercrime, let's say criminal interceptions or criminal sabotage, would you be able to persecute them under a different framework? And would that framework be sufficient? Let's say, for instance, under organized crime laws or laws on money laundering, or eventually another topic? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. I think we should consider each case separately. For example, when I was talking about Armageddon, well, we convinced these people of treason. So yes, apparently we can. It depends on a case, but still it's wrong that Ukrainian legislation has so inadequate sanctions for criminal crimes. So we still need to deal with this problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions? No? Okay. Thank you very much. It was a very great presentation. And I guess all of us are ready to have some little coffee break. And I'll be waiting for you here in 20 minutes.